deceleration is felt in the body before it is seen through the glass. A subtle shift in gravity leans forward, a gentle heaviness pressing against the chest as the high-speed momentum begins to bleed away. Outside the darkened window, the blur of passing lights separates into distinct points, slowing from streaks of white and red into recognizable street lamps and signal towers. The hum of the train, a constant companion for the last 2 hours, drops an octave. It changes from a high-pitched wind shear to a mechanical purr, deep and rhythmic, signaling that the journey across the country is pausing. A soft chime sounds overhead. It is a polite, electronic melody that seems to dissolve into the conditioned air of the cabin. The announcement that follows is a whisper, barely registering against the quiet shuffling of passengers waking from their transit naps. Kanazawa. My seat glides back to its upright position with a muted hydraulic sigh. There is a specific stillness that descends on a train carriage in the final moments before a stop. It is a collective holding of breath. I reach down to the floor, my fingers finding the cool, textured handle of my bag. The nylon is smooth under my palm. I lift it, the weight familiar and grounding, and rest it on my lap. The platform slides into view, a wash of fluorescent gray and safety yellow. With a final, almost imperceptible lurch, the train halts. The pneumatic hiss of the doors opening is the only sound that breaks the silence. I stand. The aisle is narrow, a corridor of soft carpet and muted fabric, moving into the line of departing travelers. I let the flow of the crowd carry me. There is no rush here, only a steady, fluid movement toward the exit. I step over the threshold, crossing the small gap between the carriage and the station floor. Here begins the long, rhythmic journey through the arrival hall. The floor beneath my feet is polished granite, cool and unyielding. My shoes make a sharp, clipped sound against the stone. Click, step, click, step. It is a metronome setting the tempo for the evening. Behind me, the wheels of my suitcase engage with the surface. They spin with a low, steady whir, a continuous hum that travels up the handle and into my hand. It is a vibration of arrival. I walk. The platform is long, stretching out under rows of industrial lights. The air here is different from the train. It is cooler, smelling faintly of electricity and night rain. I keep my eyes on the floor, watching the patterns of the granite shift from gray to speckled black. To my left, a row of escalators hums with a deep, mechanical drone. I step onto the moving metal stairs. The handrail is black rubber, moving in sync with my feet. I rest my hand on it, feeling the loop of the belt cycling endlessly beneath my palm. The ascent is slow. I watch the station concourse reveal itself in layers. First the tops of the ticket machines, then the heads of other travelers, and finally the wide, open expanse of the main hall. At the top, the floor changes texture. The granite gives way to a section of tactile paving, raised yellow bumps designed to guide the way. My suitcase wheels rumble over them. Thrum, thrum, thrum. A brief interruption to the smooth glide before settling back into the quiet whir of the polished tile. The concourse is vast. The ceiling is high, lost in shadows and steel trusses. I navigate the space by sound and touch. The flow of people disperses here, spreading out like water on a flat surface. I veer to the right, finding a quieter lane near the wall. My grip on the suitcase handle tightens slightly, correcting its path. The wheels swivel, aligning perfectly with my stride. There is a satisfaction in this mechanics, the simple physics of moving a heavy object with ease. I focus entirely on the sensation of walking, one foot placed in front of the other, the shift of weight from heel to toe, the slight swing of the arm, the breath entering and leaving my lungs in a slow, measured cadence. I pass a row of ticket gates. They chirp rhythmically as people pass through, a chorus of electronic approval. Beep, beep, beep. I do not need to stop. I am already on the outside, free of the barriers. The path ahead is clear. The lighting shifts again as I approach the main exit. The artificial brightness of the station hall begins to mix with the natural darkness of the outdoors. I can see the glass doors ahead, sliding open and closed, regulating the boundary between the travel world and the city world. I continue the walk. The distance feels necessary, a way to shed the static of the train ride. My legs are waking up, stretching out the stiffness of sitting. The suitcase follows obediently, a tether to the physical world. I listen to the changing acoustics. The echo of the large hall dampens as the ceiling lowers near the exit. The sounds of footsteps become more intimate, closer. I reach the automatic doors. They sense my approach and part silently. The air of Kanazawa meets me. It is rich and heavy with moisture. It is not raining, but the memory of rain hangs in the atmosphere, clinging to the pavement and the pillars. I step out into the night. Above me rises the Motenashi Dome. It is a massive structure of glass and steel, curving like a protective shell over the station entrance. It looks like a giant umbrella, held aloft to shelter the traveler. I pause for a moment, tilting my head back. The lattice of steel creates a geometric net against the black sky. Beyond the glass, the city lights reflect off the low clouds, creating a soft, amber glow. I lower my gaze to the Tsuzumi Gate. The immense wooden pillars stand like guardians. They are thick and twisted, shaped like traditional hand drums, the wood dark and burnished. They feel ancient and modern all at once, grounding the soaring glass structure in something earthy and solid. I do not analyze the history or the architecture. I simply let the scale of it wash over me. The wood looks warm, a contrast to the cool glass. I move past the gate, leaving the station complex behind. The pavement of the city street is different again. It is asphalt, slightly rougher. The sound of the suitcase wheels changes to a lower, grittier rumble. The vibration in my hand increases, a massage for the palm. The streetlights cast long, shimmering reflections on the damp road. The city is quiet. It is late enough that the rush of the evening commute has finished, but not so late that the city is asleep. A taxi glides past, its tires hissing on the wet surface. The red taillights streak away, dissolving into the distance. I turn a corner. The hotel is close. I know this not by a map, but by the sense of nearing a destination. The buildings here are shorter, the street narrower. A gentle breeze moves through the gap between structures, carrying the scent of pine and damp stone. It is a clean scent, washed by the proximity to the sea and the mountains. The entrance to the hotel is understated. A simple glass door under a modest awning. I pull the suitcase up the small ramp, the wheels momentarily silent as they leave the asphalt and hit the welcome mat. Inside, the lobby is a sanctuary of hushed tones. The carpet is thick, swallowing the sound of my arrival completely. The air is still and warm, scented with something faint like green tea or bamboo. The check-in is a quiet ritual, a nod, a soft exchange of words, the slide of a key card across the marble counter. I take the card. It is cool and smooth plastic. The elevator ride is a vertical pause. I watch the numbers climb. 2, 3, 4. There is no sound of machinery, only the feeling of being lifted. The doors slide open on the 4th floor. The hallway stretches out, lined with doors. The carpet here is patterned with leaves, a soft path leading to rest. I count the room numbers: 405, 406, 407. I stop. I tap the card against the sensor. A small light blinks green, accompanied by the mechanical clunk of the deadbolt retracting. I push the heavy door open. The room is dark, save for the ambient city light filtering through the sheer curtains. I step inside and let the door close behind me. It seals with a reassuring weight, cutting off the hallway, cutting off the hotel, cutting off the world. The silence is immediate and total. I slide the lock across. The room is cool. The air conditioning hums at a frequency so low it is felt more than heard. I leave the main lights off, navigating by the glow from the window. I guide my suitcase to the luggage rack and lift it. The zipper glides open with a soft tear. I do not unpack everything. I only take what is needed for sleep. The movements are slow, deliberate. I place my toiletries in the bathroom. I wash my face. The water is cold, shocking the skin pleasantly, rinsing away the fatigue of the train, the station, the walk. I dry my face with a towel that is thick and white. Back in the main room, I approach the bed. It is large, dominated by a duvet that looks like a cloud held down by gravity. The sheets are white, pulled taut, pristine. I sit on the edge of the mattress. It gives way gently under my weight. I unlace my shoes, one by one. The release of pressure on my feet is a relief, so profound it causes a sigh to escape my lips. I place the shoes side by side on the floor. I change into soft cotton. The fabric is loose, unrestrictive. I pull back the heavy duvet. The sheets beneath are cool to the touch, smooth and inviting. I lie down. My head sinks into the pillow. It is firm but yielding, cradling the neck. I pull the duvet up to my chin. The weight of the blanket settles over me, pressing me down into the mattress, grounding me. I close my eyes. The visual world disappears, leaving only the sensation of the body resting. The vibration of the train is gone. The rumble of the suitcase is gone. The hum of the station is gone. There is only the rhythm of my own breathing, slow and deepening. I listen to the room, the faint hum of the air, the settle of the building. Somewhere far outside, a car passes, a distant hush that fades into nothing. I let my limbs go heavy. I imagine the muscles in my legs lengthening, unspooling the tension of the walk. I imagine my shoulders dropping, melting into the white linens. The darkness behind my eyelids is velvety and deep. The anticipation of tomorrow, the garden, the trees, the moss, waits at the edge of my mind, but it does not intrude. It is a soft promise for the morning. For now, there is only the stillness of the room and the crisp, clean embrace of the sheets. I drift, letting the layers of the journey fall away one by one, until there is nothing left but the quiet dark. The sky above Kanazawa is not yet blue. It is a deep, submerged indigo, the color of ink before it hits the paper. The city sleeps under a blanket of heavy, humid mist that rolls off the Sea of Japan, muffling the few cars that might be traversing the distant avenues. Here, near the castle grounds, the silence is absolute. It is a physical weight, pressing gently against the shoulders, slowing the heart before the day has even begun. To my left, the Renchimon Gate rises from the gloom. It is a structure of dark wood and white plaster, standing like a sentry between the modern world and the preserved memory of the feudal past. The gate does not loom, it invites. The heavy timber doors are already drawn back, pinned open to welcome the dawn. I step through the threshold. The transition is subtle. The air inside the garden feels different, cooler, filtered through thousands of needles and leaves before it reaches me. My boots find the gravel path. This is the first distinct sound of the morning. It is a crunching, rhythmic noise, like stepping on coarse sugar or breaking a thin crust of ice. In Japanese gardens, the gravel is not merely a surface, it is a signal. It tells the body to slow down. It forces a deliberate pace. I listen to the sound of my own arrival, the steady grit and slide of the soles against the small gray stones. The path winds upward, flanked by mounds of earth covered in hair moss. The green is so vibrant it seems to glow in the low light, luminous and soft. Dewdrops cling to the microscopic filaments of the moss, creating a carpet of silver beads that will vanish the moment the sun crests the horizon. For now, they are jewels without owners, resting in the shadows. Ahead lies the Kasumigoik Pond. It is the heart of Kenrokuen, a vast mirror of water that holds the sky. At this hour, the surface is glass. There is not a ripple, not a breath of wind to disturb the reflection of the clouds, which are just beginning to catch the first hints of violet and gray. I move toward the northern bank, seeking the Katoji lantern. It is the symbol of this place, yet in the dim light, it is merely a silhouette against the water. I stop to observe it. It stands on two legs of uneven length, one planted firmly on the earth, the other stepping down into the water. It resembles the bridge of a kodo harp, a tuning fork for the silence of the garden. The stone is weathered, covered in patches of lichen that map centuries of rain and sun. I look closer, searching for the first sub-goal of the morning. The guidebooks speak of the two legs, but the gardeners speak of the third. The third leg is not a pillar of stone. It is a point of balance. I shift my position, leaning slightly over the water's edge. The lantern creates a perfect reflection in the still pond. The stone leg in the water meets its inverted twin, forming a solid column of shadow. But the short leg, the one on the land, hovers above its reflection. I look for the connection. Beneath the water, resting on the mud, is a flat, pale stone. It sits exactly where the reflection of the land leg ends. It is the anchor that does not touch. It is the third leg, the invisible support that holds the image together. Seeing it requires patience, a willingness to look past the stone and into the water. It is there, a pale suggestion in the dark depth. Satisfied, I straighten up and let my eyes drift across the expanse of the lake. The path continues. I turn my back to the lantern and begin to walk the perimeter of the pond. This is the time for the valley. The mind requires no new information, only the rhythm of movement. I settle into the cadence of the walk. The gravel shifts. My weight transfers from heel to toe. The sound is a steady percussion, a metronome set to the speed of a resting heartbeat. Crunch, step, breath, crunch, step, breath. The path curves gently to the right, following the organic line of the shore. To my left, the water remains static, a sheet of polished steel. To my right, a grove of pines rises up, their trunks dark and textured like dragon scales. The air smells of damp earth and pine resin, a sharp, clean scent that clears the throat. I do not look for landmarks now. I simply move. The act of walking becomes the entire world. One foot places itself in front of the other with automatic precision. The gravel is deep here, looser than at the gate. It requires a slightly higher lift of the knee, a more deliberate placement of the boot. The sound deepens, becoming less of a crunch and more of a rustle, a soft friction of stone against stone. A light mist hangs over the water, obscuring the far bank. The world is reduced to a radius of 20 feet. Anything beyond that is soft focus, a watercolor wash of gray and muted green. I watch the ground. The stones are uniform in size, sifted by river and time. Occasionally, a pine needle lies across the path, a stroke of amber against the gray. I step over it. The rhythm continues. There is no destination in this moment, only the process of traversing the distance. The muscles in my legs warm up, loosening with the repetition. The coolness of the morning touches my cheeks, my hands, but my core remains warm, generated by the steady, unhurried motion. I pass a stone bench, but do not sit. The momentum is too pleasant to break. The path dips slightly, bringing me closer to the water level. I can hear the faint sound of water lapping against the clay bank. A microscopic tide driven by forces too subtle to see. It is a whisper. Lap, pause, lap, pause. I coordinate my breathing with the sound. Inhale for 4 steps. Exhale for 4 steps. The air enters cool and leaves warm. The cycle is continuous, unbroken. There are no thoughts of the past, no plans for the future. There is only the sensation of the gravel beneath the boots and the gray light expanding in the sky. The trees here are old. Their branches stretch out horizontally, defying gravity, supported by wooden poles that have been placed with the care of a crutch for an elder. I walk beneath a massive limb, the needles brushing the air inches above my head. The canopy filters the light further, creating a tunnel of shadows. I move through it, a solitary figure in a landscape that has remained unchanged for generations. The walking meditation stretches on. 50 steps, 100 steps, 200. The texture of the ground changes slightly, becoming firmer, the gravel packed down by years of maintenance. The sound sharpens again. Click, step, click. Click, step. I focus on the sensation of the fabric of my coat moving against my arms, the slight weight of it, the warmth of the collar against the neck. These small sensory inputs are the only news the world has to offer right now. They are enough. The simplicity of the sensation is a luxury. As the path begins to rise again, climbing a small hillock, the view opens up. The mist is thinning. The far shore is revealing itself in layers. First, the dark line of the earth, then the vertical strokes of the trees, and finally, the pale wash of the sky. I continue to walk, letting the visual information arrive at its own pace. I do not rush the view. I let the view come to me. The valley of the walk ends as the path levels out near the center of the lake's northern edge. From here, the view of the water is unobstructed. In the middle of the lake lies Horai Island. It is an inaccessible sanctuary. No bridge connects it to the shore. It is a dense, overgrown mound of foliage, intended to represent the mythical island of eternal youth. It floats in the center of the stillness, a world unto itself. I stop and stand near the water's edge, searching for the second detail of the morning, the hermit's shadow. It is said to be a formation of rock and pine that, when viewed from this specific angle at dawn, resembles a reclined figure. I scan the shoreline of the island. The vegetation is thick, a tangle of azalea bushes and low pines. But near the waterline, on the eastern tip of the island, a large rock protrudes from the greenery. It is gray, jagged, and partially covered in moss. Behind it, a stunted pine leans precariously over the water. I let my eyes soften, blurring the details slightly. The shape transforms. The rock becomes a shoulder and a bowed head. The pine becomes a wide hat, casting a shadow over the figure. The reflection in the water completes the image, doubling the hermit, suspending him between the air and the deep. He sits in perpetual contemplation, staring back at the shore, forever separated from the walking path. I watch the shadow for a long time. The sun is rising somewhere behind the mountains, and the light is shifting. The shadows on the island are beginning to retreat, shrinking as the day advances. The hermit is fading, dissolving back into rock and wood. I have seen him. That is enough. I turn away from the lake and follow a smaller path that leads toward the center of the pond, traversing a low wooden bridge. The wood is damp and dark, soft under my boots. It makes a hollow, thumping sound, a lower pitch than the gravel. This path leads to the Uchihashite, the floating tea house. The structure is perched on stone pilings over the water, appearing to hover just above the surface. The shutters are open. A soft, warm light spills from the interior, contrasting with the cool blue of the morning. I approach the entrance. There is a scent of tatami straw and charcoal. I slip off my boots, stepping onto the wooden veranda. The floor is smooth, polished by centuries of socks and bare feet. Inside, the room is sparse. A hanging scroll depicts a single branch of plum blossoms. A flower arrangement in the alcove contains one camellia bud, tight and red. I kneel on the cushion near the open window. The water is directly below me. I can hear it gurgling softly around the stone pilings. A woman in a muted kimono approaches. She moves with a silence that makes my own quiet walking seem clumsy. She places a bowl before me. The ceramic is rough-hewn, black and heavy. Inside, the matcha is a vibrant, electric green froth. It steams gently, the vapor rising in a thin, twisting column that catches the light from the window. I lift the bowl with both hands. The clay is warm. The heat transfers into my palms, radiating up through my wrists. I turn the bowl twice, clockwise. The friction of the ceramic against my skin is like dry paper. I bring it to my lips. The aroma is grassy, rich, and deep. It smells of earth and spring. I take a sip. The texture is thick, almost like a broth. The taste hits the tongue in waves. First, a sharp, cleansing bitterness, followed immediately by a lingering, mellow sweetness. It is the taste of the garden itself, distilled into liquid. I swallow, feeling the warmth travel down my throat, settling in the chest. I lower the bowl, but do not release it. I hold the warmth. Outside the window, the surface of the pond has changed. The sun has finally cleared the tree line. Streaks of pale gold lie across the water, cutting through the shadows. The reflection of the Katoji lantern is now distinct, sharp, and clear. The mist has burned away, leaving the air crisp and transparent. I sit for a long time, watching the steam fade from the tea. A koi fish breaks the surface near the tea house, a flash of orange and white, causing a ring of ripples to expand outward. The ripples widen, perfect concentric circles, moving slower and slower as they travel away from the center. I watch one single ripple as it moves toward the shore. It travels over the reflection of the clouds, over the reflection of the pines. It does not stop until it touches the mossy bank, where it gently lifts a single fallen leaf before disappearing into the earth. The tea is finished. The bowl is empty, save for a smear of green foam at the bottom. The day has officially arrived, but the rush has not. I remain on the cushion, hands resting on my knees, listening to the water settle back into stillness. My breath is slow, matching the quiet rhythm of the room. The golden light inches across the tatami mat, moving with the imperceptible speed of the planet turning. I close my eyes, letting the image of the garden dissolve behind my eyelids, leaving only the sound of the water and the fading warmth in my hands. The morning mist has not yet lifted from the streets of Kanazawa. clinging to the rooftops and the stone walls like a soft, gray blanket. It is early, the hour when the city still belongs to the crows and the delivery trucks. But here at the gates of the garden, the silence is already absolute. The air feels heavier today, saturated with the moisture of the previous night, carrying the deep, earthy scent of wet soil and pine needles. Entering the grounds feels less like a crossing of a threshold and more like a gentle immersion. The sounds of the modern world do not stop abruptly. Rather, they are absorbed by the dense wall of greenery, filtered through layers of maple and oak, until they become nothing more than a distant, rhythmic hum. The gravel path stretches out, a pale ribbon winding through the darker greens of the moss and the trees. My boots make a soft, crunching sound, a steady percussion that marks the pace of the morning. Today, the light is different. Without the direct strike of the sun, the colors of the garden are deeper, more saturated. The greens are not bright and emerald, but olive and forest, rich and velvety. The stones are not gray, but slate and charcoal, darkened by the dampness. The path leads downward, a gentle slope that pulls the body naturally toward the lower elevation of the ponds. To the right, the water of Kasumigaik is a flat, silver mirror, reflecting the gray sky and the hanging branches of the pines. But my destination lies just beyond the main expanse, tucked away in a quieter corner where the water speaks in a different voice. Ahead, the ground levels out, opening into a small clearing dominated by water. Here stands the oldest fountain in Japan. It is not a grand, ornamental structure of marble and statues, but a simple, singular jet of water rising from the center of a stone basin. I pause at the edge of the basin. The sound is mesmerizing. It does not roar or splash violently. It murmurs. The water rises in a single, thick column, reaching up toward the overhanging branches before collapsing back upon itself in a constant, fluid loop. There's no pump hidden beneath the stone, no electrical hum driving the motion. It is powered entirely by the weight of the water itself, channeled from the higher elevation of the Kasumigaik pond above. The physics of it creates a living, breathing rhythm. Because the pressure relies on the natural level of the pond, the height of the fountain spray fluctuates subtly. I watch the plume rise, steady and strong, then falter for a fraction of a second, dropping an inch before surging back up. It is a conversation between the two bodies of water, connected by unseen pipes buried deep within the earth. Moving closer, I listen to the water hitting the surface of the basin. It is a textured sound, a layering of droplets and streams. The main column creates a deep, hollow note as it re-enters the pool, while the spray that drifts outward creates a lighter, high-pitched patter against the mossy stones at the rim. The surface of the basin is restless, rippled by the constant impact. Small waves radiate outward, rocking the few fallen leaves that float near the edge. I watch a single maple leaf, brown and curled at the edges, bobbing in the wake of the fountain's energy. It drifts closer to the center, gets pushed away by the current, then circles back, caught in a perpetual dance with gravity. Leaving the fountain, the path curves away from the water, ascending slightly toward a grove of massive trees. The air here feels drier, protected by a high canopy that catches the mist before it reaches the ground. The smell changes, shifting from the mineral scent of the water to the sharp, resinous aroma of pine. Here stands the Nigari no Matsu, the raised root pine. It is a botanical giant, a testament to time and patience. The tree does not simply emerge from the earth. It stands atop a cage of its own roots, raised nearly 2 meters above the ground. I approach the base of the tree. The roots are thick and gnarled, twisting around each other like the muscles of a great beast. They are exposed, stripped of the soil that once covered them, creating a hollow space beneath the trunk. It looks as though the tree is standing on tiptoe, poised to walk across the garden. Reaching out, I place a hand against the bark of one of these massive roots. The texture is rough, deeply fissured and hard. It feels ancient, like warm stone. My fingers trace the deep grooves that run vertically along the wood. This is not the smooth skin of a sapling. It is the armored hide of a survivor. I follow the line of the root upward, where it joins the main trunk. Here, the bark changes slightly, becoming thicker and more plated. There are scars here, old wounds in the wood that have healed over decades. During the war years, resin was harvested from these trees, and the marks of that extraction remain small, circular depressions and healed gashes where the lifeblood of the pine was drawn out. Tracing the rim of one of these resin scars, the wood feels smoother, polished by the years and the elements. The tree has grown around the injury, encompassing it, making it part of its architecture. It does not hide the history, it wears it. Above, the branches spread out in a vast umbrella, heavy with needles that brush against the gray sky. The wind moves through them with a hushed, rushing sound, a whisper that seems to come from a great distance. I step back, letting the tree fill my vision. The raised roots create a window of negative space beneath the trunk, framing the garden beyond. Through the tangle of wood, I can see the distant shimmer of the pond and the blurred green of the far bank. The tree is both an anchor and a frame, holding the earth while allowing the view to pass through. Turning away from the pine, I find the path again. This section of the garden is less traveled, a quiet corridor that connects the high ground to the lower ponds. The walking becomes a meditation. The gravel here is finer, the stones smaller and more uniform. Each step produces a soft, crushing sound, a rhythm that syncs with the slow intake and release of breath. The path is bordered by low bamboo fences, their rails weathered to a silver gray that matches the sky. I let my eyes unfocus slightly, allowing the details of the garden to blur into a wash of green and gray. There is no need to look for landmarks here, no need to read signs or check a map. The path is the only guide. It curves gently to the left, then straightens, leading through a tunnel of low-hanging maple branches. For a long time, there is only the motion, the weight of the body shifting from left foot to right, the subtle engagement of muscles in the calves and thighs as the ground rises and falls, the swing of arms by my sides. The air is cool against the skin of my face, a stark contrast to the warmth generated by the movement. The canopy overhead is dense, a layered ceiling of leaves that filters the light into a soft, diffuse glow. Occasionally, a drop of accumulated mist falls from a high branch, landing on the shoulder of my coat or the fabric of my sleeve. It is a small, heavy tap, a reminder of the moisture that hangs in the air. The silence here is profound. The sound of the fountain has faded completely, and the noise of the waterfall ahead has not yet arrived. There is only the wind in the upper branches, a sound like the ocean heard from far away. It rises and falls in volume, a slow tidal breath that washes through the trees. To the left, the ground drops away into a small ravine filled with ferns. The fronds are a vibrant, electric green, glowing in the dim light. They overlap in complex patterns, a chaotic tapestry of life that covers the dark soil completely. I watch the way the wind disturbs them, sending ripples of motion through the sea of green. To the right, a stone lantern stands half buried in moss. It is old, its edges softened by centuries of rain. Lichen clings to the stone in patches of pale green and white. It is not lit, and perhaps it has not been lit for 100 years. It simply exists, a marker of time, slowly returning to the earth from which it was quarried. The path continues, endless and reassuring. The crunch of gravel, the cool air, the smell of damp earth. The rhythm of the walk takes over, quieting the mind, pushing away thoughts of schedules and destinations. There is only this corridor of green, this tunnel of quiet. I count the steps without numbers, a steady cadence. 1, 2, 1, 2. The mind drifts, floating on the surface of the sensory experience. The texture of the socks against the soles of the feet, the slight friction of fabric moving against fabric, the coolness of the air entering the nose, and the warmth of it leaving the mouth. The light shifts subtly as the clouds above thin and thicken. For a moment, the green of the moss brightens, illuminating the tiny velvet structures of the plant. Then the gray returns, deepening the shadows, pulling the contrast back down. It is a slow pulse of light, a breathing of the sky. The path begins to descend again. The slope is gradual, eased by wide, shallow steps made of wood and earth. I take them slowly, feeling the change in elevation in the knees. Down into the valley of the garden, down toward the water. As the path levels out, a new sound begins to emerge from the silence. It is faint at first, a low hiss that blends with the wind. But as I continue, it separates itself, becoming distinct. It is the sound of falling water, not the polite murmur of the fountain, but something more continuous, more rushing. The trees part, revealing the area of Hisagoike Pond. The water here is darker, shadowed by the steep banks that surround it. And at the far end, cutting through the stillness, is the Midori-Taki waterfall. I move toward the edge of the pond. The waterfall is not massive, but it is powerful. The water spills over a tiered rock face, dropping perhaps 6 meters into the pool below. It is called the Green Waterfall, and looking at it, the name feels appropriate. The water reflects the dense foliage that overhangs the drop, taking on a tint of emerald and jade. I find a flat stone near the water's edge and settle there. The hydraulic engineering here is centuries old, a masterpiece of directing natural forces. The water that feeds this fall comes from the same system that powers the fountain. A complex network of channels diverting water from the distant river, bringing it kilometers across the city to this specific point. Watching the waterfall, I trace the path of a single stream. It pours over the lip of the highest stone, smooth and glassy, before hitting a protruding rock halfway down. There, it shatters into white foam, aerating and expanding, before gathering itself again for the final plunge into the pond. The sound is white noise in its purest form. It washes out everything else. It is a wall of sound that allows for no other auditory intrusion. It is cleansing. Across the pond, the Yugaute tea house sits perched on the bank. It is a small, humble structure with a thatched roof that is darkened with age. The sliding doors are closed, preserving the silence within. It sits in perfect harmony with the water, its wooden supports reflected in the dark surface of the pond. The water in the pond itself is still, absorbing the energy of the waterfall without becoming turbulent. The ripples from the falls dissipate quickly, smoothing out into a glass-like surface that mirrors the tea house and the sky. I focus on the point where the waterfall meets the pond. There is a constant churning there, a mixing of air and water. Bubbles rise to the surface and drift away, popping silently. The water is clear enough to see the stones at the bottom, round and smooth, polished by the endless flow. The air down here, next to the waterfall, is noticeably cooler. The falling water creates a microclimate, a pocket of chilled air that feels refreshing against the face. I close my eyes for a moment, listening to the layers of the sound. There is the deep, bass rumble of the main impact. There is the higher, hissing sound of the spray. And beneath it all, the faint, gurgling sound of the water draining away, moving on to the next stage of the garden. Time seems to suspend in this spot. The constant motion of the water creates a stillness in the observer. There is no beginning and no end to the flow. It is simply a continuous state of being. I open my eyes and look at the moss growing on the rocks beside the waterfall. It is thick and lush, constantly watered by the mist from the falls. Tiny droplets cling to the ends of the moss fibers, catching the flat light of the morning. They look like jewels, scattered across a cushion of green velvet. The light in the garden is beginning to change again. The sun is climbing higher, burning off the thinnest layer of the mist. The gray of the sky is brightening to a pearl white. The reflections in the pond become sharper, the edges of the tea house more defined. I remain on the stone, unwilling to break the spell of the water. The garden extends in all directions, a world of carefully curated nature. But in this moment, the world has shrunk to this single vignette. The falling water, the dark pond, the silent tea house. My breathing slows to match the steady, unhurried pace of the garden. The coldness of the stone bench seeps through the fabric of my coat, a grounding sensation that connects me to the earth. I watch a small bird, a wagtail with black and white feathers, land on a rock near the base of the waterfall. It bobs its tail, dipping its beak into the water for a quick drink, then flits away into the shadows of the trees. The ripples it leaves behind are tiny, vanishing almost instantly. The roar of the waterfall seems to soften, not because the volume has decreased, but because the mind has accepted it as the baseline of silence. It becomes a texture of the air, as constant and necessary as the oxygen. I let my gaze drift out to the center of the pond. The reflection of the sky is perfectly still there. It is a window into a second world, one where the clouds are suspended in dark water, drifting slowly across a liquid heaven. There is no need to move, no need to see what lies around the next bend. The story of the garden is being told right here, in the endless cycle of water, falling, resting, and flowing on. I let the visual details soften, the green of the trees blending with the gray of the stone, until the scene becomes a single, cohesive impression of peace. The damp air settles on my skin, cool and still, and the sound of the falling water wraps around me, a steady, unending lullaby that carries the morning away. The sky before dawn is not quite black, but a deep, saturated indigo that seems to hold a heavy weight. It presses softly against the window glass, a cool presence waiting to be let in. I slide the paper screen open, the wood moving in its track with a dry, hushed friction that sounds loud in the silence of the room. The air that drifts in smells of wet stone and pine needles, the lingering scent of a rain that fell hours ago and has since moved on to the coast. It is time to walk. The streets of Kanazawa are empty. The city sleeps in a way that feels respectful. The traffic lights blinking amber at deserted intersections, casting rhythmic pulses of light onto the asphalt. My boots make no sound on the damp pavement as I move toward the incline leading to the gardens. There is no rush. The morning is a long, open corridor, and I am the only one moving through it. Kenrokyuan Garden is different at this hour. Without the crowds, the landscape returns to its original intention, a composition of solitude and perspective. I pass through the gate, the gravel crunching softly, a sound that feels incredibly close to my ears in the damp air. My destination lies ahead, resting over the water. The Gankubashi, the flying geese bridge. From the bank, it does not look like a bridge in the traditional sense. It is a series of 11 red tortoiseshell stones floating just above the surface of the pond. They are arranged in a staggered formation, imitating the shape of wild geese flying in formation across an autumn sky. I step onto the first stone. It is broad and uneven, the surface pitted by centuries of rain and footsteps. I look down at my feet, grounding myself in the physical sensation of balance. This is not a path for striding. It is a path for pausing. The second stone requires a slight shift in weight, a diagonal movement to the left. I count them silently, not to measure distance, but to acknowledge the rhythm. 2. The water beneath the stones is dark and still, a perfect mirror reflecting the underside of the pine trees. A koi fish, pale orange and white, glides beneath the arch of my shadow, disturbing nothing. 3. The third stone feels larger, a central anchor. I stand here for a long moment. The air around the pond is motionless. There is a specific kind of silence here, one that isn't just the absence of noise, but a heavy, damp quiet that dampens the thoughts. 4. 5. The formation begins to curve. I am mimicking the flight of the geese now, my body following the arc they traced in stone. 6. This stone sits slightly lower. I can feel the coolness of the water radiating up through the soles of my shoes. 7. 8. The far bank draws closer. The gravel path on the other side looks pale in the low light. 9. 10. The final stones are smaller, tapering off the formation. 11. I step off the last stone and onto the earth. The transition is subtle, a shift from the suspended tension of the bridge to the solid, forgiving ground. I turn back to look at the path I have made. The stones sit impassive in the water, a frozen flight that never lands. Leaving the garden, I descend the slope toward the Nagamachi district. The transition from the manicured nature of the heights to the historic streets below is gradual. The trees thin out, replaced by low walls and tiled roofs. The light is changing now, the indigo fading into a steel gray as the sun begins to hint at the horizon. Nagamachi is a labyrinth of water and earth. This was once the district of the samurai, and the architecture retains a defensive, enclosed atmosphere. The streets are narrow, bordered on both sides by tall earthen walls of a warm, ochre yellow. I turn into a lane that runs parallel to a narrow waterway. This is the Onagawa Canal. The water here moves with surprising speed, a clear, rushing current that flows beside the street, channeled by mossy stone embankments. The sound is the first thing to change. As I enter the corridor formed by the earthen walls, the acoustics shift. The open, scattered sounds of the modern city are cut off, replaced by a focused, intimate sonic environment. The clay walls, thick and textured, absorb the harsh frequencies, leaving only the warm, resonant tones of the immediate surroundings. It is a sound tunnel. I walk close to the wall. The surface is rough, a mixture of mud and straw that has hardened over decades. At the base, counting the layers of stone that protect the earthen structure from the damp ground becomes a game of observation. One row of river stones, smooth and round. A second row, darker, jagged. The canal acts as a continuous soundtrack. Because the street is narrow and the walls are high, the sound of the water is amplified and directed. It echoes softly, creating a sensation of walking inside the stream itself. I pause at a corner where the canal bends. The water hits the stone turning of the embankment, creating a small, churning eddy. The sound is deeper here, a low gurgle that rises and falls. I listen to the separation of the water, the way the main current rushes past, while the eddy spins in a slow, hypnotic circle. Now the path straightens. Ahead of me, the lane stretches out for what looks like half a mile. A straight line of ochre walls, black roof tiles, and the silver ribbon of the canal. I settle into a rhythm. Left foot, right foot. The gravel is finer here, packed down hard by time. The sound of my walking is a soft scuffing, a rhythmic percussion that plays over the constant white noise of the water. There is nothing to do but walk. The light continues to lift, revealing the texture of the moss that clings to the stone foundations of the walls. It is a velvet green, vibrant against the yellow clay. I watch the way the moss follows the lines of the mortar, mapping the cracks and crevices. Step, step, step. The canal flows to my right. It is a presence that does not waver. The water is clear enough to see the bottom, where where long strands of green river weed ripple in the current. They wave back and forth, endlessly combing the water. I match my breathing to the visual rhythm of the weeds, in as they drift downstream, out as they curl back against the flow. A light breeze stirs the tops of the trees that peek over the high walls. A pine branch, manicured and twisted, nods gently. The needles brush against the roof tiles, a dry, whispering sound that mixes with the rush of the canal. I continue forward. The repetition of the walls creates a visual tunnel. Yellow clay, dark wood, gray stone. Yellow clay, dark wood, gray stone. It is a loop that requires no attention, allowing the mind to drift. There are no cars, no voices, just the geometry of the street and the physics of the water. I focus on the surface of the canal. Small leaves, dropped from the gardens above, float past. They move swiftly, keeping pace with my walking. A brown leaf, curled at the edges like a small boat. A yellow leaf, flat and spinning slowly. I follow the yellow leaf. It catches on a stone jutting out from the bank, pauses for a second, spins twice, and then releases, shooting forward again to rejoin the main current. The air is colder in the shadow of the walls. I can feel the dampness on my face, a cool mist kicked up by the movement of the water. It is refreshing, waking the skin while the mind settles into the monotony of the movement. Step, step, step. The lane is perfectly straight. The perspective lines converge in the distance, a point where the walls seem to meet. I keep my eyes on that vanishing point. It does not seem to get closer. The walking feels static, as if the world is scrolling past me while I remain in place. Beneath the eaves of the gates I pass, shadows still cling. The wood of the gates is dark, aged to a charcoal black. The grain is raised, sculpted by wind and rain. I run my hand along a wooden slat as I pass. It is smooth and cold, polished by the elements. The sound of the water changes slightly as the canal widens by a few inches. The pitch drops. The rush becomes a hum. It is a steady, low frequency that vibrates in the chest. I pass a stone lantern standing at the edge of the water. Its small wooden window is dark. It stands as a marker of distance, a silent observer of the flow. The rhythm of the walk has taken over completely now. There is no destination in mind, only the continuation of the step, the weight of the body shifting, the heel striking the ground, the roll to the toe, the push off. Clouds above are moving faster than the water below. They are breaking apart, revealing patches of pale blue. The light hitting the street is soft and diffuse, casting no hard shadows, only soft gradients of gray. I watch the reflection of the sky in the water. It is a fragmented picture, broken by the ripples, pieced back together, and broken again. blue shards dancing in the dark stream. The wall to my left ends briefly, revealing a small pocket park, then resumes. I do not stop. The momentum carries me past the opening and back into the corridor of clay and stone. The monotony is comfortable. It is a blanket of simple sensory input. The visual field is consistent. The auditory field is consistent. The tactile sensation of the cold air and the hard ground is consistent. I let my gaze soften, losing focus on the details. The walls become a blur of warm color. The water becomes a streak of light. The sound of my footsteps merges with the sound of the water until they are one single, pulsing rhythm. Gradually, the long, straight section of the canal begins to curve. The walls mimic the bend, guiding me gently to the right. The change in direction breaks the trance of the straight line, bringing a renewed awareness of the immediate surroundings. I see a small stone bridge ahead, distinct from the wooden ones I have passed. It is a simple slab of granite, spanning the narrow water. I slow my pace. Reaching the bridge, I stop. I lean against the low stone railing. The granite is rough under my hands, textured with lichen. I look down into the water, passing beneath me. From this vantage point, the current looks different. I am no longer moving beside it. I am above it, watching it flow away. The water emerges from under the arch of the bridge, dark and smooth, then hits the light and sparkles as it runs down the channel. I watch the patterns of the ripples. They are never the same, yet always identical in nature, an infinite variation on a single theme. The silence of the district has a texture. It is thick, supported by the earthen walls that block out the city. I can hear the sound of a drop of water falling from a tree branch into the canal. Plip. It is distinct and clear. I turn my attention to the wall opposite me. It is covered in como straw mats hung to protect the clay from freezing and cracking. The straw is golden, tied with dark ropes in precise, grid-like knots. The texture of the straw is coarse. 1,000 individual stalks bound together to form a shield. I trace the lines of the ropes with my eyes. Vertical, horizontal, a knot. Vertical, horizontal, a knot. The orderliness of it is soothing. Someone's hands tied these knots, one by one, moving down the length of the street. The sun has risen enough now to touch the tops of the walls. The ochre clay glows with a muted warmth, contrasting with the deep shadows that still fill the bottom of the lane. The color is rich, the color of the earth itself, refined and smoothed. I listen. Far away, very far away, the sound of a temple bell tolls. One strike. The sound travels through the heavy morning air, muffled by the distance, arriving as a soft, rounded vibration rather than a sharp tone. It hangs in the air, decaying slowly, until it is indistinguishable from the hum of the canal. I push away from the railing, but I do not walk far. Just a few steps to a wooden bench set back against the wall, sheltered by the overhang of a pine tree. I sit. The wood of the bench is solid. I let the weight of my legs settle. The walking is done. The muscles in my calves release their tension. A warm, tingling sensation spreading downward. From here, I can see the length of the canal I just walked. It disappears around the bend, a curving line of water and stone. The perspective flattens the distance. I close my eyes for a moment, letting the visual world fade, leaving only the acoustic tunnel. The water rushing, the wind in the pine needles, the distant, fading memory of the bell. The air is still cool, but the promise of the day's warmth is beginning to weave through it. I breathe in, slow and deep. The smell of the damp earth, the wet straw, and the clean water fills me. I open my eyes and look at the water one last time. It flows endlessly, carrying the leaves, the light, and the time. I rest my hands on my knees. I watch the water. I listen to the walls. The morning holds its breath, and I hold mine with it, sitting in the quiet, golden corridor, waiting for nothing at all. The morning air in Kanazawa holds a heavy, silver quality, as if the mist from the Sea of Japan has drifted inland to rest specifically within the borders of the garden. It is not quite raining, but the world is wet. The pavement outside the garden gates is dark with dampness, and the stone lanterns standing guard at the entrance wear coats of dew that blur their sharp edges. Entering Kenrokyuan at this hour feels less like walking through a gate, and more like slipping through a seam in the heavy atmosphere. The city noise, already muffled by the distance, vanishes entirely behind the curtain of trees. Here, the air smells of wet pine needles, cold earth, and the mineral scent of standing water. The path ahead is gray gravel, raked smooth in the center, and scattered with fallen needles at the edges. My boots make a soft, crunching sound that seems loud in the quiet. It is the only sound for a long time. The great pond, Kasumigig, stretches out to the left, its surface a perfect mirror reflecting the white sky. There is no wind yet to disturb the reflection, so the world is doubled, the trees growing both upward into the mist and downward into the dark water. Ahead, the silhouette of the Karasaki pine emerges from the gray backdrop. It is not merely a tree, it is architecture. Its branches do not reach up toward the sun, but stretch outward, hovering over the water like dark clouds made of wood and needle. Today, the garden is in the midst of its winter preparation. The famous Ukitsuri ropes are being tended to. A tall pole of bamboo stands lashed to the trunk of the great pine, rising high above the canopy. From the very top of this pole, hundreds of golden ropes cascade down in a perfect cone, tied to the heavy, sprawling branches below. It looks like a tent of gold thread protecting the dark green giant. I pause to watch the maintenance. 2 gardeners are working within the structure. They move with a slowness that suggests deep familiarity with the wood. One gardener stands on a high ladder, his boots wrapped in soft cloth to protect the bark. He reaches for a rope that has slackened in the damp air. He does not pull it sharply. Instead, he tests the tension with a gloved hand, feeling the weight of the branch it supports. He adjusts a knot. It is a simple loop, wrapped twice and tucked, designed to hold fast against the weight of heavy snow, but release easily when spring returns. He secures it, and the rope hums tight, a straight line of gold against the gray sky. He descends the ladder without a sound. There is no clatter of tools, no shouting between the workers. They communicate in nods and gestures, a silent language born of years working in the same soil. The second gardener sweeps the area beneath the branch, clearing away a small pile of fallen twigs with a broom made of twigs itself. The scratching sound of the broom on the moss is rhythmic, like a slow, steady breath. SHHH, SHHH, SHHH. I leave them to their work, letting the sound of the broom fade behind me as I follow the curve of the pond. The path narrows here, winding away from the open water and into a denser grove. This is the beginning of the long walk, a transition from the manicured center of the garden to its quieter, forested edges. The gravel changes texture underfoot. It becomes finer, the stones smaller, creating a softer sound with each step. The rhythm of walking takes over. Left foot, right foot. The crunch is muffled, almost absorbed by the density of the green surrounding the path. I let my eyes unfocus slightly. The details of individual leaves and stones blur into a wash of cool colors. Green of the moss, brown of the trunk, gray of the stone, white of the sky. There is a bridge ahead, a simple slab of stone crossing a narrow stream that feeds the pond. I cross it. The water below is silent, moving so slowly that the current is only visible if I watch a single floating leaf drift inches over the course of a minute. I continue. The path rises gently. The muscles in my legs warm with the slight incline. The air grows cooler as the canopy thickens overhead. These are older trees, their bark thick and deeply furrowed. They stand close together, their branches interlocking to form a roof that blocks out the white sky, dimming the light to a twilight gloom. The rhythm of the walk becomes the only thing that exists. There is no destination, only the motion. Step, the sound of fabric moving against fabric as my coat brushes my side. Step, the feeling of cool air touching the back of my neck. Step, the faint pressure of the ground pushing back against the sole of my shoe. I am walking through a corridor of moss. It covers everything here. It carpets the ground in undulating waves of emerald and jade. It climbs the trunks of the trees, softening their rough bark into velvet. It caps the stone lanterns, turning them into soft, round shapes that look like they have grown from the earth rather than been carved by hands. The stillness is absolute. Even the birds seem to be waiting for the sun to break through the mist. The only movement is the slow drift of my own passage. I pass a large stone sitting by the path. It is dark, almost black, damp with the morning moisture. A single drop of water falls from a branch high above. It strikes the stone. Plip. The sound is tiny, yet it rings clearly in the silence. I keep moving. The path curves to the left, following the contour of a small hill. The gravel gives way to packed earth for a few yards, silencing my footsteps completely. Now I am a ghost moving through the garden. I can hear the sound of my own breathing, steady and slow. In, counting to 3. Out, counting to 4. The trees on my right thin out slightly, revealing a glimpse of a stream running parallel to the path. The water flows over smooth river stones. It does not bubble or splash. It simply glides, a sheet of liquid glass wrapping around the rocks. I watch the water as I walk. It is hypnotic. It flows endlessly, never the same water, but always the same shape. It carries a few pine needles, brown and slender, spinning slowly in the lazy current. They drift past me, heading toward the pond, heading toward the sea. The path turns back to gravel. The sound returns. Crunch, crunch. It is a comforting sound, a tether to the physical world. The air here feels older. It is heavy with the scent of damp wood and decaying leaves. A rich, earthy smell that speaks of cycles turning over and over for centuries. The light shifts slightly, the gray sky brightening by a fraction as the morning advances. But the garden refuses to wake fully. It prefers this half-sleep, this suspended state of mist and silence. I walk past a grove of bamboo. The stalks are thick and green, rising straight up like pillars in a cathedral. They do not sway, for there is still no wind. They stand in perfect vertical lines, a contrast to the twisting, turning shapes of the pine trees. The path begins to descend. The gravity pulls me forward gently, making the walking effortless. I surrender to the slope, letting the momentum carry me down past the roots of a giant oak that snake across the ground like sleeping serpents, down past a stone basin filled with rainwater, the surface dark and still. The walking is a trance. There is no past, no future. There is only the gray gravel, the green moss, and the cool air. The mind empties, leaving only the senses to record the world. The coolness on the cheek, the smell of rain, the sound of the stone. Step, step, step. Eventually, the path levels out. The dense canopy opens up, and I find myself standing before the Karam no Matsu. This pine is different from the Karasaki. It is lower, denser, its bark darker and rougher. It is known as the pine of the tortoise, and looking at the gnarled, spreading roots that grip the earth, the name feels earned. It looks ancient, solid, a creature of the earth rather than the sky. I stop. The silence of the garden gathers around this tree. I am here to listen. I step closer, moving off the center of the path to stand near the protective fence. The fence is made of simple bamboo rails, weathered to a pale tan color by years of rain and sun. The air shifts. A very slight breeze begins to move through the upper branches of the garden. It is not enough to rustle the leaves, but it is enough to sway the heavy limbs of the Karam no Matsu, just a fraction of an inch. I close my eyes and wait. The tree is supported by timber posts, crutches for its heavy, aging arms. The wood of the tree rests against the wood of the support. The breeze pushes again. Click. It is a hollow, wooden sound, dry and resonant. It is the sound of the bamboo support shifting against the pine branch. It is not a creak, not a groan. It is a precise, clean click, like a stone being placed on a go board. I wait. The wind dies down. The silence returns. I breathe in the damp air, holding it, then releasing it slowly. The breeze returns, slightly stronger this time. Click. There it is again. The bamboo click. It is the heartbeat of the tree, a sound that proves the giant is moving, reacting, living. It is a sound usually lost under the noise of crowds and cameras. But in this early morning solitude, it is as clear as a bell. Click, click, clack. The branch settles back into place. The sound is oddly comforting. It speaks of support. The tree leans and the bamboo holds, a partnership of wood and wood. I open my eyes. The bark of the pine is a landscape of deep fissures and ridges, hosting patches of vibrant green lichen. I trace the line of the branch out to where it rests on the support. The point of contact is smooth, polished by years of subtle friction, years of clicking in the wind. I linger here for a long time, just listening to the conversation between the tree and its crutch. It is a slow conversation, spoken only when the wind insists. Finally, I turn away. The path leads toward the edge of the garden now. The Suijinzaka gate lies ahead. The exit is not a sudden barrier, but a gradual release. The path begins to slope downward again, steeper this time. This is the Suijinzaka slope. a shaded tunnel of foliage that leads back down to the city level. I begin the descent. The gravel here is darker, almost black, and the trees lean and close, creating a tunnel effect. To my left, a high embankment rises, covered in ferns that drip with moisture. To my right, the ground drops away into a ravine filled with tangled undergrowth. The air grows slightly warmer as I descend, the chill of the high garden left behind. The sound of the city begins to return, but it is soft, a low hum of tires on wet pavement and the distant murmur of morning life. I pass the old guardhouse, a small wooden structure that smells of cedar. It sits empty, watching the path. The gate itself comes into view. It is modest, dark wood under a tiled roof, framing the street below like a painting. I do not rush toward it. I shorten my stride, savoring the last few yards of the garden's sanctuary. I reach the gate and place a hand on the wooden post. It is cold and rough. I look back up the slope, back into the green tunnel. The mist is still there, caught in the branches, holding the silence in place. The click of the pine, the scratch of the broom, the crunch of the gravel, they all remain up there, suspended in the morning air. I turn forward again. I step through the gate. The pavement of the city street meets my boots, solid and unyielding. The transition is complete. The garden recedes, not disappearing, but settling into the back of the mind. A quiet room, the door to which has been gently pulled shut. I stand for a moment on the sidewalk, adjusting my coat, letting the rhythm of the walk slowly dissolve into the stillness of staying.